Hello and welcome to another edition of our ETF Insight series where we chat with innovative leaders from the ETF and digital assets ecosystem. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Antonette Kleiser, who is Senior Vice President at Brown Brothers Harriman. Antonette, it's great to see you and thank you for participating. Why don't we start with you telling us about BBH and your role there?
Thank you, Andrea, and thank you for inviting me to join you today. I work for Brown Brothers Harriman. They're a US private bank. We have 17 offices globally with asset management, private banking, and investor service lines of business. The investor service business for which I work have, I think, more than 5,800 employees globally. We service in excess of $5 trillion on behalf of our, I think, almost 400 clients. We provide a full suite of custody and fund administration, transfer agency service to our asset manager clients globally, including ETF issuers. And I'm head of our ETF product strategy for Europe, based in our Dublin office.
So on the asset servicing side, and obviously with your experience and expertise and the different type of clients that you're dealing with, what trends are you seeing like right now in the ETF space?
Looking at us as the asset servicing, we're a global asset servicing business. So we work in partnership with our clients. And as I said, that's both mutual fund clients and ETF clients. So we support them in what is, an increasingly challenging global investment environment. Obviously, these challenges are being caused by the COVID pandemic and, the Russian-Ukraine conflict. We're seeing inflation and, hence the central bank raising interest rates. It's also resulted in the rollout of obviously more sanctions, liquidity issues. We're seeing restrictions on the disposal of Russian securities. So, all of this is, as I said, creating much more challenging environment for our clients. Increased regulation already also continues to be a trend. It's a big area of scrutiny in the asset management space. So it's certainly a trend we're seeing. Regulation focusing on ESG, digital assets. We're seeing asset managers focusing on operational resilience. Subject matter experts on those non-core areas of their investment management business. And and in this environment, ETFs are a low-cost product. This continued automation of the workflow is critical. And sorry, I'm a long answer to your question, but in the ETF space in particular, we do a survey. I think we're in the 9th year of our survey, and some of the trends that came out in that survey this year, maybe I'll just name 4 in particular, the phenomenal growth, and the expectation that this will continue and grow exponentially. The huge interest in thematics, which has, seen some impressive growth in recent years, particularly in terms of, I think, product offering in Europe. Here we are seeing some US managers come to Europe and issue UCITS versions of their 40 Act thematic products. The third trend we're seeing really is around the growth in digital assets and cryptocurrency themed products, more in ETN wrapper than in ETF, obviously, because of, regulatory forces in Europe at the moment. UCITS can't hold them directly. And then I suppose, the fourth one, which is not just ETF, but mutual fund, is the focus on ESG. There's lots of this, as I mentioned, regulation around this at the moment, issues around ESG standardization, rule fragmentation. So, and the industry globally is working on this. So, so I suppose in terms of both the mutual fund and the ETF, there are overlaps in sort of the trends that we're certainly seeing.
Yeah, and I love those the BBH surveys. I think it's a really great summary of like what's happening in the marketplace. And my last question for you, Antonette, is so obviously in the US we've seen a lot of very large asset managers enter the ETF space, like Dimensional, Neuberger Berman, I think is the most recent one, Capital Group. I could be wrong here, but I haven't seen, at least for the few years that I've lived in Europe, I haven't seen any major asset manager names enter the ETF space. And you obviously talk to a lot of these clients. Do you think that we're going to start seeing more enter the space as the ETF assets are there's, at some point, I feel like maybe seeing what's happened in the US, some firms here may say, we need to also, jump on the ETF bandwagon. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I suppose, at a very basic level, what happens in the US obviously, follows in Europe, particularly around, I think, asset growth, product innovation. Asset growth, as we said, has been pretty phenomenal, particularly last year. I think European assets grew by about 26% year on year to the end of 2021. This is real strong growth, And this year, we continue to see record inflows into ETFs. So, and the survey showed us that 80% of European investors plan to increase their use of ETF allocation. So, which is up from 62% in 2021. So there's certainly appetite is there. And we expect that a desire to be part of this growth story will continue to attract, new entrants into that ETF market space. There's a few things probably that may be drivers in terms of a relatively new global phenomena is the converting or merging of ETF of existing mutual fund into an ETF. So this may encourage mutual fund managers to launch ETFs because it gets around some of the obstacles they may have around seeding or, track record or scale. The semi-transparent in the US certainly seems to have helped fuel growth there in the active space. So, they address concerns around the daily portfolio transparency. There is an open question, I think, in Europe around, say, for instance, whether the relaxation of those daily transparency requirements would tempt more active managers to launch ETFs. And IOSCO had come out earlier this year with an ETF consultation paper, so looking for industry feedback. And this is certainly like one element of that. I think, in summary, our expectation is that we will see a growing number of European asset managers launch product with an ETF wrapper. An asset manager looking for the new distribution channels for existing strategies. And the ETF wrapper is certainly very attractive to investors for all types of reasons. So, we'd be very optimistic in terms of more managers in Europe certainly looking at this space.
Well, that's great, Antonette. I really appreciate your insights, and it's very informative. For those, if you'd like to watch more videos like this, you can go to blackwatersearch.com, and thank you for watching.